Okay, so I came back to my van. There's the, can you see it? Anyway, there's the museum building back there. I'm parked across the street at the park. And I had a little freak out when I went inside because I saw the general admission price. The last time I was here, I got in for free because I had a reciprocal membership with general science museums in the country, and this time I don't have that because I'm not going to enough museums to make it worth the expense. Um, when I was living in the van, I was going to lots of museums, so it was totally worth the expense, and it saved me actually a lot of money. But so this time I have to pay general admission, and it was $25. So I have to decide if I want to pay that to go in there. I'm gonna go sit inside and think this through. Okay, so I want to talk through a couple of the things that are going through my head. Starting with when I was living in the van full time, I was living on literally $300 a month. And so $25 was a fairly significant part of my budget. So I often went well out of my way in terms of time and effort and other things to do in order to avoid spending anything that I did not absolutely 100% have to for survival or for health. Health was kind of the one thing that I would spend a little bit of money on. I was trying to get out of autistic burnout. I didn't know it was autistic burnout at the time. I thought it was a major health thing, and it did have other health effects. But anyway, so I was willing to spend money on health. Thought two. Something that I've been realizing in the last couple of years is that I think that a lot of my conception of how much is expensive was formed when I was coming into my adulthood in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And so things like prices have changed a lot since then. Things have gotten more expensive. Inflation has happened. Inflation happens, it's not a past tense. And I think that a lot of my money mindset is still stuck in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and that is not actually relevant or helpful for making money decisions today in 2025. Okay, thought three. I've heard some financial experts and psychologists both talk about finances in terms of people think about spending in terms of like buckets of things, like categories, and they're more willing to spend money on certain categories than others, and depending on which category their brain allots a particular purchase to, it can feel very expensive, or it can feel inexpensive, or it can feel reasonable. And my initial default is to slot a museum visit into an entertainment category. And to me, entertainment is superfluous. It's a luxury. It's not necessary. It can go out the window. It's the first thing to go. And I do not spend much money on entertainment. And when I do, it's very, very particular. And thinking this through more, I do not think this is an entertainment purchase. I think this is a personal development purchase, because I'm not going there because I want to see the exhibits so much. I am looking forward to seeing the exhibits. Of course, I love that kind of thing. And I'm not doing it in order to do that. I am doing this because this is reminding me of a very important personal growth moment, a personal mind shift that I shared about in the last video. Check that out, there'll be a link to it. I made that like 20 minutes ago when I was about to go into the museum. and then did, and then saw the price, and then came back out. So this is about reminding me about a personal growth experience. And I think that reinforcing that personal growth experience is an important thing for me at a personal level. And also, I think another layer to the personal growth experience will be spending money on things that I wouldn't have at the time when I simply didn't have the money. Which brings me to, I think we're on thought 4, which is I am not actually in the same financial situation that I was in when I lived in the van. I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. Money is still kind of tight, but I'm more stable, and I'm not living on $300 a month. I'm not eking out survival, and I'm not a spendthrift. I don't just randomly spend lots of money on things that I don't actually need. But every once in a while, spending money on something that I want, that is good for me, with discretion, with intentionality, not just throwing money away. I think that is a healthy thing, and I need to reinforce my ability to be able to do that. Which brings me to thought 5, which is that I'm not a spendthrift. Like, this is not like the gateway drug to a beginning of a spendthrift life. Like, this is not some signal that I'm wasteful with money. That's not accurate. Although those kinds of statements were drilled into me when I was growing up by someone who had very black and white thinking, that's not actually the case. And just because I do this does not mean that I'm going to suddenly become irresponsible with money. So for many reasons, I'm wondering if there's something else. I don't know, but I think I've talked myself into doing this. I think that it's something that I need to do because it's not about entertainment, it's about personal growth. And at least personally, I'm more willing to spend money on things that help me grow as a person. That, because I can envision that me loosening up a little bit around money stuff with discretion when it's appropriate, it would be a healthy thing for me. That's something that I need. So I will take some videos inside to prove to you that I have spent the money and that I have gone inside. And this is something that I need to do. Okay. Here I am. I made it in the museum as I said I would. And I'm getting ready to go into the Space Center. This is a cool exhibit. It's about how gravity bends the objects and even the space itself around it. They've got this grid on the floor that if you step on it, it responds to where you move and bends the grid to show you how it bends space-time. So one of my classmates at St. John's College and a good friend of mine, Aaron Wall, is the person or part of the team, I'm not exactly sure which, who just a few years ago proved that it is possible for information to escape from a black hole. He's a professor at Cambridge University in the UK. I'm very proud of him. And here's a tiny little bit of the moon. I got really into the whole Apollo expedition when I was in my van trip. One of the years coincided with the 50th anniversary of the landing of the first man on the moon, and so I've always been interested in the Apollo missions and space travel and space stuff in general. And because there was so much about it, because of the anniversary, Since so many museums had extra exhibits around the anniversary, I got to really geek out about all of the lunar stuff and the Apollo mission stuff. That was cool. They also have an adolescent Tyrannosaurus Rex. Here's part of it in their um, laboratory. And there's a huge exhibit right now on butterflies. Here's a bit about the life cycle of the butterfly. It's this pupal stage where the butterfly goes into a chrysalis that I named my coaching practice after. So, interesting fact that a lot of people don't know is that they call the thing that a butterfly forms when it goes into, a lot of people call it a cocoon, but it's not. A moth makes a cocoon, a butterfly makes a chrysalis. And the difference is that a cocoon is a thing that it's material that the moth spins around itself, but a chrysalis is actually the exo layers of the butterfly's body that it sheds, and it turns into this hardened shell that the rest of it inside dissolves into a goo inside. So the chrysalis is actually part of the caterpillar's body, and a cocoon is not. It wasn't ever part of the moth. It was something that it spins around itself. Here's a bunch of really pretty butterflies. Part of their butterfly collection. Okay, I'm gonna go explore the museum a while. See you later. Okay, I did it. You saw me. I was in there. I paid the money. I went in. I looked around the space stuff mostly, as well as some of the dinosaur stuff and a little bit of the butterfly exhibit. I didn't have time to do the whole museum, as par for the course from the last time I was here. But speaking of that, like the last time I was here, it was September 18th, exactly to the day, 6 years ago, and I'm back. And yeah, so this was a double. I was expecting the personal growth reinforcer of reminding myself that sometimes halfway done is wholly right, and that I don't have to see it all every single time. I don't have to stay glued to that completionism mindset. Sometimes it's okay to just see some of it, and you get a good experience out of that. That was the personal growth reinforcer that I was planning on. I also had the unexpected personal growth moment of spending money on something that to me felt very expensive, especially since I was not going to be in there for very long. I was only going to be in there for, again, like an hour or two. And again, I stayed for about an hour and a half. So $25 for an hour and a half of a museum visit to me feels very expensive. But again, it wasn't $25 for a museum visit. It was $25 for having this personal growth experience. And that is worth well more than $25 to me. In fact, that could be worth potentially thousands of dollars in my life, because I can envision that it could help me make other decisions that at the time feel uncomfortable to me, but I know are going to pay off, especially around money things that at the time feel expensive to me, but I know are worth it because it's going to get me something that I value much more than the price tag. And sometimes that's hard to define. Like, it's not always a strict material transaction. Like, if I spend this $25, I know I'm going to get $250 back or something like that. It doesn't work like that always. In fact, very rarely. But sometimes the benefit from it is personal, but being able to do things that I hadn't been able to do before because I've learned something, because I've spent money to have an experience that was beneficial for me. All sorts of different potential possibilities, but But learning is a big one for me. I'll spend a little bit more on learning than on a lot of other things because I get a lot more back from it. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. And I hope this was interesting. It was definitely unexpected for me in a couple of ways with the date and the whole new, like, ooh, I could have this money experience. Yeah. It did feel a little uncomfortable to pay that, but I did it, and I'm okay. I'm gonna survive. And I have the money. It's gonna be all right. I'm gonna be all right. I'm gonna repeat that to myself a few more times. All right. Take care. Have a near a wonderful day.